Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Pamela, and you are watching Pam Entertainment TV, where we review movies, television series, and do celebrity legal news. Also, join me for my pop culture chats. If you'd like to support the channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. My Venmo and Cash App is below. Thank you so much, and let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Pamela, and you are watching Pam Entertainment TV, where we review movies, television series, celebrity legal news, and my pop culture chats. We are here, and we're going to stay here in this celebrity legal news. Y'all, Sir Lucius Grange has responded to Drake. Now, if you've been following this, Drake had sent out a discovery. He had sent out like 75 points of documents and things that he wanted. And he sent out a couple of points wanting information from Sir Lucius Grange. Now, if you don't know who he is the CEO of UMG Records, UMG Holding. He is the president of the parent company of Drake's record company, which is Republic Records, and Kendrick Lamar's record company, which is Interscope Records, right? So again, if you have followed all of my live streams that I have had and that I have completed, y'all, you would know what I'm talking about. That 75-point page thing. Here are some of the. I initially started with my celebrity news. Let's see if I can share this. I initially started with my celebrity legal news. We went through that. And then I talked about Let Us Talk. We went over the oral arguments that were on 6/30/25 in this. So that is a huge playlist. It was over a few hours. And so therefore check it out. The judge had some great insights within that. So go check out that video as well. We also had my video of Drake is destroying hip hop. We went over some of those discovery documents that he wanted, and some of those things, in my opinion, was disgusting. He was asking UMG to give him information on Kendrick, the relationship between Kendrick Lamar and Dave Free, and that relationship in terms of how is Dave Free relationship with their children. And people are speculating that he was asking for a paternity test. Why would UMG have all of that stuff? You know. And then lastly, Drake versus UMG will end. I went over a few letters that were filed by the court. And after I went over those letters filed by the court, so here we have it. Just the docket and all of these little different things. Here we go. We're going to go over that. But all of the docket, and we went over the set of RFPs. We went over the first, the second, and we went over the third set that was down here in August 12th. We've pretty much gone over most of this stuff. So what we're going to do now is go over Lucius Grange's response. So before we do that, let's go into the declaration of Sir Lucius Grange. Let's get into his declaration, and then we're going to get the letter that he sent to the honorable judge. So let's start with this one first. So this was filed. This is the declaration. It's on the docket, but I don't see like where they had all of that information. You know how they have it, but it is on the docket. It's a declaration in opposition to motion. And so he did the declaration and then he went and did the letter response. So let's read what this declaration says. This United States District Court, Southern District of New York, Aubrey Drake Graham versus UMG Records Incorporated. It's the Declaration of Sir Lucius Grange, CBE. Pursuant to 28 USC 1746, I, Lucius Grange, declare as follows. I am the chairman and CEO of Universal Music Group, which is indirect parent corporation of defendant UMG Recordings. Plaintiff Aubrey Drake Graham claims that I was behind a scheme to devalue his brand through the release and promotion of the Kendrick Lamar recording, Not Like Us. An allegation that makes no sense due to the fact that the company that I run, Universal Music Group, has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Drake, including long-standing and critical financial support for his recording career, the purchase and ownership of the bulk of his recording catalog, and the purchase of his music publishing rights. Oh, you know your girl just went silent because I don't know how to read this. I don't know how to read this. Do I read it with some sass or do I just read it as professionally as I can? Because basically, what he has said, and I'll read it again. I'm going to have to read it with some sass. Plaintiff Aubrey Drake Graham, aka Drake, claims that I was behind a scheme to devalue his brand through the release and promotion of the Kendrick Lamar recording, Not Like Us. An allegation that makes no sense due to the fact that the company I run, Universal Music Group NV, has invested hundreds of millions of dollars in Drake, including long-standing and critical financial support for his recording career, the purchase and ownership of the bulk of his recording catalog, and the purchase of his music publishing rights. Did Lucius Grange this son, Drake? Let's continue. It makes no sense whatsoever, as I run a publicly traded multi-billion dollar multinational corporation whose operations in over 60 countries covering nearly 200 markets ultimately report up to me. Our business encompasses over 100 record labels, as well as a multinational music publishing division, group merchandise, and direct to consumer businesses, the worldwide Virgin Music Label Services, short and long form audio-visual productions, and a variety of other business, each with its own CEO, president, and its own management structure. Collectively, these businesses issue tens of thousands of leases and products each month. My focus is on developing and implementing the global strategy that will help shape UMG for generations to come. In light of this responsibility, the proposition that I am in the weeds as it is to the release and promotion of any particular sound recording from the thousands of UMG releases throughout the world is farcical. Woo! Given my role, I am accustomed and unfortunately largely resigned to personal attacks. I further recognize that a frequent strategy of UMG's litigation's opponents is to attempt to waste my and UMG's time and resources with discovery of the sort that Jake is seeking here. I will be all kinds of damned. Either in an attempt to gain media attention or in an effort to force some kind of commercial renegotiation or financial concession. Because basically what he's saying is, hold on, let me finish. Let me finish this whole paragraph. But given Drake's motion, I would like to make it quite clear that I have never heard the recording Not Like Us, nor ever saw the corresponding cover art or music until after they were released by Interscope Records. Whilst as a part of my role, I certainly have financial oversight and responsibility for UMG's global businesses. The proposition that I was involved in, much less responsible for, reviewing and approving the content of Not Like Us, its cover art or music video, or for determining or directing the promotion of those materials is groundless and indeed ridiculous. He said Drake is wasting his time and is asking for stuff that he wouldn't have any knowledge of until after it had gone out. He is not the person that's tending to the day-to-day machinations of getting an artist's music out. That's not his job. His job is as the parent company, as the CEO of the parent company, his job is to provide strategies for the totality of the global market of UMG. So basically, he's telling Drake and Drake's team, ain't nobody got time for that. Nothing. No time for this. So why are you asking for me to give you something? I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. Executed on August 14th in Monterey, California. And he gives his signature here. He said, I ain't got time for Drake. I don't have time for this. I run a major corporation. I don't have time for the nitpicking of when somebody put an album out or anything. Each one of these companies that I work with or who are under the parent company, they have their own CEOs. You're going to deal with that. All right. So let's share this chat. Now, this is what was filed in court. And let's see. They filed it on August 14th. And so what we'll do is we'll read this, and I guess it's coming from UMG's attorneys and lawyers. And so it was dated August 14th, and it's to the Honorable Jeanette Vargas, and it's regarding letter opposition to Drake's motion to compel certain requests for production. Because remember, I told you, Drake has all of this discovery information that he's asking for. And one of the discovery information that he's asking for is for Lucien Grange to give him all the comments and emails that he has that's pertaining to the production, talking about, or just brainstorming. He wants all of that information in regards to Not Like Us. And he wants Lucien Grange to give them that information. So we heard what Sir Lucien said in his declaration to the court. So let's hear what the attorneys have come up with. So this is a letter opposition to Drake's motion to compel certain requests for production. It says, Dear Judge Vargas, Drake's second letter motion seeks to compel the production of documents responding to certain requests for production. And that's RFPs. The requests for productions are RFPs. Drake seeks inter alia production of Kendrick Lamar's full recording contract, documents showing the value of Lamar's recording catalog since January 2020, Interscope's monthly revenue and profits over the same period, and Interscope's CEO John Janik's executive compensation for the last 5 years. As with his motion concerning Sir Lucien Grange, this motion is nothing but an obvious attempt to misuse the discovery process to pursue irrelevant and overbroad requests, principally calculated to harass, embarrass, or annoy Drake's perceived adversary. This includes Kendrick Lamar, who is plainly the real target of Drake's anger, Interscope Records, the label that distributes Lamar's recording, and Interscope CEO John Janik, and UMG more broadly. Baby, they done said the quiet part out loud. that this motion is nothing but an obvious attempt to misuse the discovery process to pursue irrelevant and overbroad requests, principally calculated, and these are the words that they're using, to harass, embarrass, or annoy Drake's perceived adversaries. This includes Kendrick Lamar, who is plainly the real target of Drake's anger, Interscope Records, the label that distributes Lamar's recording, Interscope CEO John Janik, and UMG more broadly. They are getting down to the nitty gritty because, again, the judge hasn't ruled on the dismissal. But she did say that they can still, that doesn't have to stop them from doing the discovery process. So Drake and his team is out here giving 79 points of documents that they want given to him so that for discovery. It says requests 11 and 12 in RFP number 11. Drake seeks Interscope CEO John Janik's private and highly confidential compensation details going back to 2021. 4 years before Not Like Us was even released. Yet Drake's make no attempt to explain how his intrusive request for 5 years worth of an individual's compensation records is conceivably relevant or proportional to the case, which centers on the release and promotion of a single track and music video in 2024. There is none. And his argument in support of discovery of any of Mr. Janik's compensation information, none of which attempts to link Mr. Janik's compensation to any decision to release Not Like Us in particular, fails miserably. So in other words, you asking for this, you asking for how much this man makes 5 years before Not Like Us came out. What does that have to do with Not Like Us coming out? What does him getting paid have to do with this with Not Like Us? Again, Drake is trying to squeeze this Not Like Us record into a bubble instead of it being a part of a continuous rap beef. And if you followed my reading of the transcripts from June 30th, the judge said it plainly that Drake's team wants to put Not Like Us in isolation. And she says you can. It's like the way that they are presenting it is like Drake was minding his business, then Kendrick Lamar dropped this record, and it is now defaming him. And the judge was like, listen, this is like two people standing in the middle of the street arguing. People are listening and watching that argument go back and forth, and they're hurling insults back and forth at each other. And then at the end of this whole back and forth session, you want to come back and say, hey, you know that insult that you said about my mama? I think that that's defaming and I want to sue you. And you're trying to make that particular incident or that particular joke or insult to be the beginning and the end of all the insult. And you don't want to contextualize it into a rap beef. Let's continue. Drake's only explanation for seeking Mr. Janik's compensation details is that Mr. Janik was incentivized to promote Lamar's music because as a CEO of Interscope, his bonus is based in part on Interscope's financial performance. Tellingly, Drake does not argue that such an arrangement would have given Mr. Janik an incentive to promote Kendrick Lamar over any other Interscope artist or Not Like Us over any other recording that Mr. Janik thought might be a commercial success. Instead, Drake manufactures the basis for such a motive out of thin air, speculating that because UMG CEOs encourages competition between its record label division, UMG's compensation structure must be a zero-sum game that pitted Lamar's label against Drake's label. But this theory is nowhere to be found in Drake's complaint, which states only that Mr. Janik's bonus is based primarily on financial success of Interscope. And the financial, and if we take it as such, the financial success of Interscope is more than just Kendrick Lamar. How many artists do you think Interscope has on that label? The proposition that Mr. Janik or any other corporate executive running a division of a large business is partly compensated based on the performance of that division is entirely unremarkable. Drake is not entitled to discovery in UMG's most sensitive and highly guarded records, which are not public anywhere, let alone 5 years of them based on a flimsy showing. And it gives C. N. Ray Klein, 2022, WL 1567584 at 10 SDNY in May 18, 2022. Because the applicants have not explained how such a request are proportional to the needs of the case, as Rule 26 requires. The breadth of these demands is unduly intrusive and appears designed to harass the persons and entities covered by the demand. Cleaned up. RFP number 12 runs even further afield of any relevance claim. Drake seeks Interscope's 2024 Executive Incentive Matrix targets, projection, and performance used to determine annual incentives and compensation for Interscope's executives and officers. Drake offers no basis for this request beyond the meritless arguments about Mr. Janik. That is not surprising, as his complaint makes no allegations about the compensation of any other Interscope executive. The request is nothing but a fishing expedition that should be denied. Discovery must be focused on the actual claims and defenses involved in the action. So basically, what they're arguing is the fact that there is no basis for you to get this in, because it's not going to talk about the performances or thereof about Not Like Us. You're talking about information about executives that you have no business knowing. Request 29 and 30 of the RFPs. 29 seeks all documents from January 2020. Now, mind you, let's be very clear. Not Like Us came out in 2024. But let's continue. RFP number 29 seeks all documents from January 2020 to present relating to, quote, any instruction, direction, or suggestion that any song or music video over which UMG has contractual rights or control of any kind be censored, modified, or altered, or not licensed, published, or promoted based on the content of the song or video. Number 30 seeks the same with respect to any music by rapper Pusha T, including particularly the story of Adidon, a different diss track from a separate feud that attacks Drake. How are you going back? And I've read this one in my last video. Why are you going back to Pusha T? Now I say UMG, and maybe I need to be talking to Republic. Did someone, not these particular executives, the CEO, did someone do something like that? Because this is very specific. So he's trying to go back, or he's trying to use this case to go back to check how much money everybody who had rapped against him made. RFP number 29 is grossly overboard and unduly burdensome. UMG has a catalog of more than 220 artists and brands and 3.2 million recordings. The idea that it should review records for every single song and music video that it exercised contractual rights or control over for the past 5 years to respond to this request, which sweeps as broad as seeking documents related to even a suggestion of modification, is absurd and unworkable. They're saying that they got to go through 220 artists who has made over 3.2 million recordings to find that information. And that's a lot of work to get somebody to work on. So let's read the footnotes. It says Drake's claims that UMG's sole objection to request 11 and 12 is relevance. ECF number 81 at 2 is false. UMG objected in its initial response and continues to object on the basis that these requests are irrelevant and not proportional to the needs of the case. Because remember, he is suing for defamation for the song Not Like Us, not for the song The Story of Adidon, Not Like Us. He's not. What does you're talking about? 219 other artists that you want to go through their music and pick through it with a fine tooth comb. You only want one artist, and that's Kendrick Lamar. And you want Kendrick Lamar for the song "Not Like Us." I told y'all in my last video, this man is trying to scorch the earth of hip hop. RFPs number 29 and 30 also fail on relevance grounds. Drake alleges that UMG's standard long form recording contracts include a provision permitting it to eliminate material. That it believes constitutes defamation or libel, and that historical exercise by UMG of such rights is relevant. But UMG's capacity to censor or modify content under separate contracts has no relevance to its capacity to censor or modify content under a contract with Lamar. UMG has produced the relevant sections of its contract with Lamar bearing on any rights to modify or censor his song. That is the only contract relevant to Drake's defamation claim. And so they ask you to see New York Times Company versus Microsoft Corp. Drake's only other relevance argument is that the documents showing any attempts by UMG to censor rap lyrics would be relevant to testing UMG's position that rap lyrics are not understood by the reasonable listener as conveying factual information. This argument fails because the reasonable person standard is, as the court noted, an objective question of law. The subjective views of any specific individual or of UMG do not factor in. Requests 31 and 33, Drake makes only a passing attempt to justify RFPs number 31 and 33. See EFC number 81 at 3, which are irrelevant, invasive, and entirely overboard. In RFP number 31, Drake purports to need documents showing 5.5 years of Interscope's monthly revenues and profits to be able to compare the financial impact of Not Like Us on Interscope and UMG to past years. The notion that Drake could isolate the impact of Not Like Us from Interscope's top line financial is nonsensical, as any number of events in the previous half decade account for shifting revenues and profits at Interscope. Even taking his flawed position as truth, Drake offers no basis for why he needs 5 years of financial data. Drake's explanation for RFP number 33 is equally nonsensical. He stated that he needs valuation of Lamar's recording catalog for the last 5.5 years to support his theory that UMG was incentivized to promote Not Like Us, not only to profit in the near term, but also to heavily monetize in the future. UMG wanted to prove it could immediately maximize Mr. Duckworth's value to convince him to re-sign exclusively with UMG long term. What this means is anyone's guess. Drake's make no attempt to explain why discovery on the historical value of Lamar's recording catalog has any relevance to his claim that UMG tried to convince Lamar to re-sign with UMG, or how that relates to Not Like Us. It doesn't. Lamar's contract. Drake's RFP, number one, seeks any contracts between UMG and Lamar reflecting UMG's right to approve, reject, refuse to publish, edit, amend, alter, or veto the publication of Lamar's songs or video. Each EFC, CEFC number 83-1 at 8. The parties agreed that UMG would produce any portions of its contract with Lamar reflecting such rights and redact the remainder. At Drake's request, UMG also agreed to leave the contract section headed unredacted. UMG did this, just that. Drake nonetheless now moves for an unredacted copy of Lamar's contract. This appears to be another instance of Drake seeking discovery based on his grudges. Drake called on Lamar to release his contract during the rap feud. Pull your contract because we got to see the split. Drake cannot explain why the rest of the contract is relevant. He contends that redactions deprive him of context, but the portions of the contract bearing on UMG's right to refuse, reject, or otherwise edit Lamar's music, videos, or accompanying artwork have been produced and are entirely intelligible. Drake contends that the contract should be produced in full on the principle that courts oppose unilateral relevance rejections. But this is not an absolute rule. Exceptions apply where, as here, commercially sensitive information is at issue. Commercial information such as budget figures, performance metrics, and other business performed was properly redacted, holding that competitive sensitive portions of licensing agreements that were not relevant to the issues in the case that would be redacted. As in Trillion, the redactions here shield highly commercially sensitive information. Drake has made no showing whatsoever as to the relevance of the redacted portions, the subject matter which may not be gleaned from their headings, and the ongoing competition between Drake and Lamar's requires the exercise of additional caution with respect to the commercially sensitive information. Drake also argues that the existence of the attorney's eyes only designation in the party's protective order abrogates any otherwise justified withholding or redaction of documents, including confidential or proprietary business information. Not so, as even with a protective order in place, the disclosure of commercially sensitive information can be harmful. That is, simply telling UMG to apply the AEO designation in the protective order does not eliminate the risk of harm from disclosure of its commercially sensitive information, particularly given the fact that the redacted information is not relevant. Redactions are appropriate. Accordingly, Drake's demands for an unredacted copy of Lamar's full contract should be denied. At minimum, the court should conduct an in-camera review of the contract before ruling on plaintiff's motive. Determining after an in-camera review that certain irrelevant information should be remained redacted. And this is Rollin A. Ransom, attorney for UMG Records. Baby, when the empire strikes back. When the empire strikes back. They're saying no. They are saying no. What you will not do is you will not get this information because it doesn't make any sense for you to have the information. It just doesn't make any sense for you to have the information. And we're not going to give it to you. And you can cry and you can cry all day. But we're not going to give it to you. Craziness. What I'm doing is going back through So if we could, let's see. I don't think we need this. Hold on, y'all. All right. So in this letter, so they talked about number one, which is right here. Hold up. Let me put it on the. Here we go. So they talked about this right here. All contracts and agreements between uh, Kendrick Lamar, Duckworth, his agents, anyone working on his behalf, including all contracts, they're saying no. They're saying that is not your business and you don't get to talk about that. Here we go with number 11 and 12. They're saying documents sufficient to show the executive's compensation structure and annual incentive plans for Interscope chief officer. They're saying no. They're saying no to number 12. Documents sufficient to show Interscope's 2024 executive incentive matrix targets, projection, and performance and used to determine annual incentive compensation for Interscope's executives and officers, including Chief Executive Officer John Janet. They're telling you, hell no. Let's see. I don't know if this one has 20. Yeah, so this one doesn't have that. So let's come out of here and let's see. Oh, what did I do with the other one? Oh, that's not what I want. All right. Child, I'm just getting so much stuff. What is going on over here? All right, let's. All right, let's go 33. It's when I highlighted. 31, documents sufficient to show Interscope's monthly revenue and profits from January 22 to the present. They said no. Document 33, sufficient to show the value of Kendrick Lamar's recording catalog. Why would you need to know that? They're saying no. So this is the information that they have used in regards to Drake, and they said they are sick of Drake. That they are sick of Drake, and they're no longer trying to play nice with Sir Drake. So that's the information that has come out on the docket as of now. So we are all cut up. So if anything comes across, I will definitely come back over and review it. We are all cut up with Drake. I am going to catch us up on Meg the Stallion and Milagro. There is some interesting information. Tory Lanez's appeal has been once again denied. So I will catch us up on all of that. Y'all, please tell a friend, a kin, a coworker, and that heifer that you can't stand that I'm over here making these videos. As always, peep up. Bye bye.